What's up, good people all across the world? During Black History Month, the Dripping in Black podcast continues to shine a bright light on modern day history makers. On this episode, we speak with Skorpyen November, a young lady who is the host and producer of 3 different podcasts. Here's a little glimpse of why all 3 podcasts are necessary.
Most people think when they first meet me, either I'm ultra serious all the time, which I am. I'm intense. I'm passionate. I can be intense. But I'm also silly and humorous at the same time. And once people get to figure that out about me, it's okay. And within podcasting, I can do that. I can be silly when I want to. If I want to be serious, I can be serious. I can be intense. And people get to pick and choose which part of me they want to engage with by which podcast they choose to engage with and listen to.
Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis, and per usual, we have another fantastic guest who represents Black excellence across the Black diaspora. Today's guest is Skorpyen November. Skorpyen, say hello to the world.
Hey, world!
All right, so Skorpyen is a fellow podcaster, and so we'll get into what she does and the excellent work she's doing in the podcast realm. But first, we like to begin, as our audience knows by now, by asking the very simple question of who is our guest. So who is Skorpyen November?
That's a loaded question because I am all things. I'm all things. Skorpyen is a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a well-rounded, what I would hope is a well-rounded Black woman who leads with love and attention, love and respect behind, all things that she does, that's trying to grow, continuing to challenge herself and others in the space of podcasting, life, spirituality, being a better person. So I'm just a dope ass individual. I'm not gonna lie about that.
All right.
I'm a Scorpio, so I gotta kind of be on my King Kong-ish, every once in a while and talk my stuff. But realistically, I am humble. But I know what I know, and I won't let anybody take that from me, and neither should you. So.
All right. So where was Skorpyen born and raised?
Skorpyen was born and raised in Selma, Alabama.
Wow.
I am from Selma, Alabama, the great Selma, Alabama. You can say what you want, but there's just certain things that you can't take away from certain people in certain places. And Selma's one of those places that helped rear me into who I am, that helped instill the love of my Blackness and celebration of my Blackness and intentionality within the space of the things that I do, and wearing that proudly. So, yeah.
Okay. Go a little bit about your school life. What schools did you attend in Selma?
Well, I'll say this because y'all trying to get all up in my business, and we ain't going all the way there. But
Divulge what you want.
I will say
just
this.
Trying to get to know you.
I did graduate from high school. I did come from Selma, Alabama. And those that know will know who I am and all the great things that Selma has to offer. And but I must also admit that I was raised partially in Minneapolis as well. So I have I have that duality there where I grew up in a space that was, primarily filled with white folk. And then you have Selma, Alabama, that's like probably at the time when I left Selma was like 85-90% Black. So you have that duality there. So
okay. I'll keep the questions safe from this point on. So we know we can talk about the podcast world. You have 3 podcasts. that you are the host and producer of.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk about those Smart Mouth Scorpio podcast, If It Isn't Love, and the Fix, spelled FYX.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about those.
Oh, well, those podcasts are a representation of me. You get an idea
Mm,
of who I am as a person, the things that I like, the things that I value, the things that are important to me. With Smart Mouth
mm,
Scorpio podcast, that was my first podcast ever. I got into the
mm,
podcasting space because I didn't necessarily hear my voice, opinions, ideas that I
mm,
truly identified with, and I felt others would appreciate that too. And the only way for
yeah.
me to be for certain that my voice or would be out there is for me to create my own podcast. And so Smart
Yeah.
Mouth Scorpio podcast, I covered everything on that podcast, from reality television to van dwelling to polygamy to sexual health,
Mm,
all the things, right?
mm,
Too much,
mm.
because I wasn't bringing it back to center. I wasn't making it make sense. It was just, I was just on there talking about it. And then I was like, oh,
Okay.
I need to take some of what I like with my love of television to the Vix Podcast. The Vix Podcast initially started off talking about the show called 90 Day Fiance and other stuff. I was like, I'm not really into
Mm.
this anymore. I don't like it. I was like, and other people are talking about it. Why don't I talk about stuff that I really, 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 really like, which is
Mm.
Black-led television shows and movies. So that's what the Fix
Okay.
focuses on: Black-led television shows and movies, where I do recaps, commentary, and etc. Then I started
Okay.
If It Isn't Love podcast. That is where love and relationship lessons meet storytelling and music. And so I
Mm.
essentially share love and relationship lessons that I have learned throughout dating. And I let music be the illustration to those stories. So it combines my love of music, my love of myself, dating people, storytelling, and I have an occasional guest here and there to share their own love stories, dating history. Now let's switch it back to Smart Mouth Scorpio podcast. That podcast
Mm.
now is strictly where I talk about Black life, Black culture, Black news, and the celebration of Black folks. But I do that with intentionality and responsibility. So get all of that together, you get me. Not all of me, but you get
Wow.
me.
Okay. So my next question, I think, is an obvious one. Do you sleep?
I do. I do. Some days I will be very honest. I was just talking to one of my podcast bros the other day, and I was like, lately I've been dreaming about podcasting stuff while I'm sleeping. I'm like, I can't stop the dream. I wake up and then I go back to sleep. I'm still dreaming about the same stuff. So I do sleep, but podcasting's in there too.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I think what you said kind of rang true to us as well. Podcasting is a space where if you don't hear it out there, you don't see it out there, and you have a notion for it, you can actually do it yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so that's a commonality I see between what you've done. I'm curious about, when did you start? How long have you been doing
Mhm.
podcasting?
I started in 2017 with my podcast. It wasn't really, the episode sucked. I wasn't taking it seriously. I wasn't committed. And then once I became committed was probably like late 2019, early 2020 is when I really started taking things seriously within the podcast space, and where things just started to fall into place for me. And I knew this was what I was supposed to do. And I just kept running from there. So, um, it is what it is. You got to take it seriously if you want the returns, and if you want
Was there
to get the fulfillment.
like a seminal moment for you to shift from just kind of doing it for fun to taking it serious? Is anything that kind of happened, or it's just something that happened along the way?
It's just something that happened along the way, where I realized I kept creating podcasts, and I was like, okay, if you're gonna keep creating these podcasts, you need to take them seriously. It's girl, what you
Yeah.
doing?
Hmm.
It's fun to
Yeah.
have as a hobby, right? But I realized I was getting the most enjoyment out of when I was doing it. So
Hmm.
even when it comes to the research part, when I'm researching an episode, even when I'm outlining an episode, when I'm putting the music to an episode, those things are the things that I enjoyed on the podcast, and seeing,
Hmm.
excuse me, and seeing how people would be like, "Ooh, I love that episode," running into random folks in that virtual space, being like, "Ooh, I heard that episode. That was a dope episode." I was like, "Yeah, you vibing with my shit? You vibing with it? Okay." You know? And so from there, it was just like, okay, if you really want to do this, do it. And so that's how it kind of started, seriously, for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you ended up here on the Dripping in Black podcast. What kind of set this whole thing up?
Well, I started, put it like this, with all the mistakes that can be made within the podcasting space, I pretty much made, especially with Smart Mouth Scorpio podcast. I put a lot of sweat equity and time into learning podcasting and growing within this space. Also, there are other folks out there that want people to be honest with them about what's happening and how to do things and what mistakes not to make, how to avoid mistakes, how to reset, how to get over the fear of what other folks will say about them podcasting, although they have some value to bring to the podcasting space. So I was like, I had people asking me questions about things, and I knew that I knew what I knew. So I started consulting. And so with consulting, I met some great folk on Clubhouse, started creating rooms on Clubhouse, expanding my consulting and all of that. And I ran into Sean. I met Sean there, and Sean's dope. And we just he would listen to me talk, and I guess he just figured maybe she can come on. Maybe she's good enough to come on Dripping in Black. Maybe, just maybe. We'll try it out and see. And so here I am within that space. And it's not just as simple as that. It's that he and I built a rapport. I built a community with folks. I built relationships and networking within that community. I think it's important for me to build community with Black folk. Everything that I do is about the celebration of Black folk and creating safe spaces for Black folk, and to have conversations, real conversations, where people are not trying to hide information from you. People are not trying to block your blessings and all those things. I don't operate within that space. There's enough blessings for everybody. There's no hoarding of blessings. God blesses everybody. And so how am I going to begrudge you something that is rightfully yours? I can't have it anyway because it's not mine. So why not encourage you to go get your blessings or to operate in the space where you can receive your blessings, whatever they may be, and my blessing is seeing you be blessed. That's part of my blessing. My blessing is, I think we are put here to be of service to folk, and however, whatever that way is for you, my way is in this way. That's not to say that it won't change at some point, and I'm meant to bless people in other ways, but right now is within the podcasting space. And I do it, and I love it, and that's where I'm at with it right now.
Would you say that you've always had because podcasting has a certain level of entertainment, right? Would you always say you had that kind of in your spirit to entertain folk?
That is funny that you should ask me that, because I am also an introvert, and most people would not know that.
Wow.
I'm an
That's
introvert.
Interesting.
And I want to share this. The introvert is someone that replenishes by being alone. It doesn't mean we don't want to interact with folk. It just means we want to interact with folk on our own terms when we have the energy to do so. And a lot of the time, people would growing into myself, people would misunderstand my personality. Most people think when they first meet me, either I'm ultra serious all the time, which I am. I'm intense. I'm passionate. I can be intense, but I'm also silly and humorous at the same time. And once people get to figure that out about me, it's okay. And within podcasting, I can do that. I can be silly when I want to. If I want to be serious, I can be serious. I can be intense. And people get to pick and choose which part of me they want to engage with by which podcast they choose to engage with and listen to. Because on Smart Mouth Scorpio, you'll get a little bit more intensity from me than you would on the Vix and If It Isn't Love podcast. You'll get a little bit more of the humorous side, and people get to see me be silly and all of those things. Always being entertaining, no, because I used to be, as a child, I was much shyer, and into my early 20s, I wasn't very confident in who I was. and what I brought to the
Wow.
table. I knew I was smart. I didn't know that. I've always known that. But I didn't know about the personality side was lacking because I was scared to show that because I was always
Mm-hmm.
afraid of rejection. And when you operate in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of rejection, you're never going to be your full self because you have that fear.
Yeah.
If either you
Yeah.
rock with me or you don't, homeboy. That's the way I feel about it. Either you rock with me or you
Mm-hmm.
don't. Either you picking
Mm-hmm.
up when I put it down or you're not. And if you're not, that means that we're not supposed to be in the same space together. But I'm not going to, solicit your affection. That's what we not gonna do. Either we vibe or we don't, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Okay.
had to grow into that. That wasn't
So
easy.
yeah. So you're naturally an introvert, and you've grown
Mhm,
into a space where you're confident now,
mhm,
confident enough to have 3 podcasts and then go on Club
mhm.
Room and consult about podcasting.
Yeah.
So again, I'll ask the question again. Was there anything? Was there a seminal moment where that transition happened, or is that just kind of the growth that you've
It's
experienced
just
through the years?
it's just growth at becoming as you become an adult and you experience life, you will understand that it's your life. Live it how
Yeah,
you want. You have to enjoy it and enjoy it on your own terms, right? And
yeah.
I know for me, operating with love and respect, but with the intention behind the things and the way that I'm moving within this space, I'm okay with however you feel about
Mm,
it. I can't control how you feel about it. I think one of me and Sean's favorite books. Sean shares this book with me too. The loves this book, The Four Agreements, right?
yeah.
And what I've come to understand is if I make the agreement with you and engage with you on your negative reaction to me, then I'm agreeing with you, right? If I engage on that, I don't agree to that.
Okay,
I mirror what I
gotcha.
want to see from people. I treat you
Mm,
how I want you to treat me. Now it's up to you whether you reciprocate that, right? It's also none of my business what you think about me. You could be thinking in your hair right now, like this heifer here. I'll be glad when she get off this doggone mic. Let this interview hurry up and end. I don't know. That's not my business. That's not my business. I can't control that. You know what I mean? Those are your thoughts, and
mm,
you're entitled to your thoughts and to feel how you feel, and as well as I'm
mm,
entitled to mine and to feel how I feel. So it was just a growth
mm.
thing for me and to grow within that space. Also, another
Mm.
one of my favorite
Interesting.
books I like to talk about, if you don't mind, is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I read that book in
Mm,
college, right? And
okay.
it was in one of those compilation literature books for African American literature. And I fell in love with the bits that it had in that book. And I went and purchased the book. I've purchased that book probably 5 times, right? I've even purchased it for other folk because I love the book. And because it's like what the way you treat people should be a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So if you feel highly about yourself, you should treat other people just as highly. And
Absolutely.
I that's one of the biggest lessons that I got in this book, to be humble, but also it's okay to think highly of folks and yourself and to treat people in kind. And so that's the way I try to live. Do I fall short? Yes. Because some days I'm on
Mm.
my King Kong shit. Some days I'm like where I don't want to be bothered. Some days I'm the most accommodating. I'm human. I'm a person that's
Mm,
living the human experience, trying to figure it
mm.
out, and I'm continuing to grow. So the person you see today may not be the person that you see 2 years from now. Hopefully, God, hopefully not. I will be so much
Yeah,
more evolved. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
that's why I
Continue to
say
grow,
I can't
change,
think
and
of a
develop.
seminal moment. It was just growth.
Mm, yeah, yeah. We have Sean and I have a mentor, and one of his phrases. He has 1,000 of them, but one of his phrases is "continue to grow, change, and develop." And so that kind of leads me to the next question. Um, so you know what you know now. You've been in the
Mhm,
game for about 4 years.
mhm.
If you can go back and talk to your former younger self, just getting into the game, what's some advice you would give Scorpyen in 2017?
Do more research. Do more research, find out about the mics, be confident, be yourself, and use what you already know and bring it to this space. Use what you already know,
Yeah.
and know that already, and know that you are unique in this space, and walk within that. Show people who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. See, I love asking that question, in case there's somebody watching and they have the desire to kind
Mhm.
of, they're inspired by your story and they have a desire, oh, maybe I want to start a podcast. Some important, information they can gather just from that reflection that you have on what you could do. All right. So my next question is, how would you say the podcasts are going on a scale of 1 to 10? If 10 is fantastic and 1 is they suck, like you said initially with the first one. Where would you place them on the scale?
Okay. See, because that scale could be based on a lot of things. I will say overall, just give an overall number. Overall, with the way that I feel, the growth, the exposure, all those things. I would say right now I'm at a 7-8 when I'm taking everything into consideration. So I'm gonna say a 7-8 overall. That's how the podcasts are going. Would I like to see more growth? Yes, I need more growth.
Yeah.
So if you guys are rocking with my podcast and you like my podcast, tell somebody about the podcast. Rate those suckers. You know what I mean? So
So I'm gonna dig a little deeper there. I want to get
Mhm.
specific. So you're at your 7, 8,
Mhm.
and you want to get to the 10, 12,
Mhm.
15 on the 10-point scale. What are some tangible things that our audience can do to support you to get to that place?
To tell somebody about them, check them out. If you like them, tell somebody. Tweet it. Just like, hey, check out that podcast. This was a dope episode I just listened to. Rate the podcast. When you rate someone's podcast, your favorite podcast, it helps with the discoverability of that podcast. So other folks that may be interested or looking for that content can find it more easily. So that helps. Also, tell me you like it. Say tweet me. Send an email. I share all that information within the episodes and the episode description. I want to know what you're liking. If you didn't agree with something I said, be like, girl, I don't agree with that. Say that. Engage. Because what you will get is you will get better episodes from the host, because they're going to want to engage with you more, and they're going to talk to you, and that increase the listenership experience for you as the listener, to know that a host is talking directly to you or addressing one of your concerns or your questions. That makes the experience both better for you and the host. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so tell the audience where they can find these podcasts, Smart Mouth, Scorpio, If It Isn't Love, and The Fix. Where can they find these podcasts, and what days do you drop them?
Okay, so Smart Mouth Scorpio podcast will pick back up in 2022. We're on hiatus for a little while, but they typically drop every other Sunday. So every 2 weeks on a Sunday. And the Fix podcast, that drops, it depends on which shows that I'm recapping or what movies that are coming out. So those have multiple episodes weekly. So you just have to stay locked in. If there's a show that you like that I'm recapping, trust that the episodes are usually, the recaps are usually going to come out within 24 to 48 hours after the show airs. So, yeah. And if It Isn't Love podcast, those drop like a check on the 1st and the 15th of every month. The 1st and the 15th of every month, like a check. So you're going to get those episodes quite frequently. Yeah. So
where can they find them?
You can find them on all major podcast listening platforms. You can go to scorpionnovember.com. You can also search my name. That's the easiest way to find my podcast on a podcast listening platform, is to search my name. So it just makes it easy, because you
Go
see
ahead
all
and
my
spell
things.
that name out, because it's spelled a little different.
Definitely. It's spelled SKORPYENNOVEMBR. Scorpyon November.
All right, cool. So we're going to get to the last and most important question that we ask here on the podcast. Are you ready?
I'm ready. If not, I
Right.
better get
Have
ready,
you ever
huh?
been on the-
Fast.
Have you ever been on the cover of a magazine?
I have in my head. Yeah.
Okay. That's where it all begins. Everything begins with thoughts and
Right.
words. So, all right, imagine that. So, I think we're going to allow for whatever happened in your head to come to fruition, because here at the Dripping in Black podcast, one of the things we do for our guests is we place them on the Dripping in Black magazine cover. So,
Yeah.
S Squared, my producer, is going to pull up your cover for you.
Ew, I look good. You look good, girl. You look good.
Yep. So that is
So
also
you gotta
a
do that self-talk. You gotta tell yourself.
that is a parting gift as well. That's our thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
We will get that printed up nicely and shipped out to you as a thanks. And we look forward to seeing what else you have in store for the future. We thank Miss Skorpyen November for coming on to the Dripping in Black podcast. Any shout outs you want to give out, Skorpyen?
I just want to give you all a shout out. Thank you for having me. This was dope. This was fun. And wishing y'all much success with Dripping in Black. Sean is, I know I said this earlier, he's dope. He's really dope. He's helpful. He's kind. He's respectful. And he represents Dripping in Black and what you all do so well within the spaces in which I've seen him. So kudos to him and you for doing something amazing and shaping the culture and being intentional about that. So kudos to y'all. I just want to shout out everybody that has supported. Your support is invaluable. I can't tell you how much that means for a podcaster to have people support you and to rock with you and dig what you do. So if you support anyway, whether that's liking, sharing, listening, what have you, thank you. And I want to encourage you all to continue to support this podcast. Cash at them, get some merch, share their podcast. All those things help, and it helps encourage a podcaster to keep going. So thank you all. Thank everyone that supports it anyway. You are appreciated.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again to Skorpyen November. We'll ask the audience to hang on for our final segment, The Last Drip. But thanks again to the beautiful Skorpyen November for joining us, and we look forward to what she has in store.
I gotta do my own air horn. Sean knows I do that all the time.
That's pretty good.
See, Sean, he said they're pretty good. See, they're dope. See, I knew I was on to something.
Up next, The Last Drip.
A Dripping in Black thanks to Skorpyen November, and I encourage you to check out all 3 of her podcasts for your listening pleasure. However, we have reached the final segment of our podcast called The Last Drip. The Last Drip is the last opportunity for us to squeeze in a bit more of Black excellence for you. In this final segment, we highlight a common thread between our guest and our vast and rich African American history. For this episode, our subject is Mary D. Dudley. Born Mary Good in Homestead, Pennsylvania in 1912, Mary was the daughter of entrepreneur William Good and the sister to ABC TV news reporter Mel Good. Mary D. attended Homestead High School, went to the prestigious Howard University, and then on to St. Man Radio School in Pittsburgh. After graduating from St. Man, Dudley applied to the soon-to-be launched WHOD radio station. On August 1st, 1948, WHOD went on air for the first time, and Dudley launched her daily 15-minute show, Moving Around. Mary D became the nation's first African-American female disc jockey with a daily show. After 6 months, the show expanded from a 15-minute segment to an hour. 2 years later, her show was 2 hours long. At that time, Mary brought in her brother to run a daily Courier news segment. Mal was a reporter for the Pittsburgh Courier. Mal covered the Jim Crow segregation, poor housing, and prejudiced politicians. Mal Good went on to become the first African-American news reporter for ABC, the TV network. Mary's show was spotlighted by Ebony magazine. She interviewed national celebrities such as Cab Calloway, Jackie Robinson, and Sarah Vaughan, just to name a few. She would broadcast on WHOD from 1948 to 1956. Dudley left WHOD and went on to work for station WHAT in Philadelphia, where she hosted a Monday through Saturday gospel music show called Songs of Faith. She stayed on air with WHAT for 8 years. Mary D. Dudley was a trailblazing radio personality who broke racial and gender barriers and paved the way for future media personalities like today's guest, Skorpyen November. And for this reason, Mary D. Dudley is this episode's last drip. For more on Mary D. Dudley, check out sites.google.com, herstoryblog.com, and that's her, STRYBLG.com, facetofaceafrica.com, and that's face, the number 2, faceafrica.com, and blackthen.com. My thanks to all of these websites for the knowledge. A friendly reminder that the Drippin' in Black DIBK Drip Shop is open. Go to dibkdripshop.com to cop the latest Drippin' in Black merch and all of the goodies under the Drippin' in Black umbrella. And as always, a huge thanks to all of our listeners, viewers, supporters, and subscribers. And a big shout out to the best producer in the podcast game, S-Squared Sean Smith. And until next time, be kind, be loving, and be excellent on purpose. It is a choice.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.